Welcome to another episode of Full Build Friday, where I try to build a character from a comic, game, or similar source using the baseline rules of Pathfinder Second Edition and the Path Builder app. A little late though it may be, this week features League of Legends' newest character, Aurora, the Witch Between Worlds. Aurora released while I was still on vacation, so I'm playing a little bit of catch-up. With that being the case, why don't we hop right into the build goals for this bespectacled bunny. Aurora is a Vistayan from the Freljord known as the Briny, I assume I'm pronouncing that right, who resemble rabbits and hares. She was born with the unique ability to see spirits, who she often befriended and helped settle, though this ability served to isolate her from her own tribe. After coming across an unknown spirit, she ventured out and met Orn, befriending him by tending to his hearth home, and earning a wand forged by him for her trouble. Now mechanically, she is a combat-oriented battle mage, though, as we'll come to see, there's quite a bit of nobility in her kit as well. We see an expression of both of these aspects with her passive, Spirit Abjuration, which causes her spells and attacks to apply stacks on a target. On the third stack, all of these stacks are consumed to deal extra damage and put Aurora into Spirit Mode, which grants her movement speed and health regeneration. The first activated ability that she can actually throw out is Twofold Hex, which fires a blast of cursed energy that damages and marks enemies. She can recast it to pull this cursed energy back to her, damaging enemies it passes through again. Befitting her being a bunny, Across the Veil lets Aurora hop into the spirit realm to turn invisible and enter spirit mode. This ability resets on a takedown. Her last basic ability is the Weirding, which blasts an area of spirit magic that damages and slows enemies, while knocking Aurora back a short distance from the recoil of it. Her ultimate is Between Worlds, which causes her to hop to a target location and unleash a pulse of spiritual energy, which pulls those that get hit by it into the spirit realm. Enemies trapped inside the spirit realm can't leave, they're simply knocked back by the border, while Aurora can run into the border to teleport to the opposite side of the circle. This all comes together in a nimble spellcaster who keeps out of reach of enemies with her enhanced speed, invisibility, and rabbit-like hops. Between these leaps and bounds, she fires off powerful area effects, while also laying down and trapping areas. There's some tough aspects to cover here. This was a bit of a challenge, which I was keen to do, and I do think I have an idea to leap all those hurdles and bring together a build for this spirit-seeing spellcaster. The human ancestry is often my catch-all for when a build doesn't mechanically demand a specific ancestry. However, in this case, there are mechanical reasons behind taking it, while we can also add some flavor with the Beastkin heritage reflecting her Vistayan heritage, obviously choosing Bunny as her kindred animal. At least starting off here, we will be sticking to the human ancestry for natural ambition as her first level feat, which will give her an extra class feat when we get down to that. When it came to her background, I was looking for something to represent Aurora's connection to the spiritual realm and spirits in general, and I think the best offer for that is ultimately the Willing Host background. This makes Aurora trained in spirit lore, but doesn't make her trained in any other skills, or even give her a skill feat. Instead, it gives her an ability to accept a spirit into her body to become proficient in a skill, though, in turn, she must find a way to repay these spirits, which can certainly lead to some fun roleplay. Now as for her class, Aurora has a very strange set of abilities that are honestly difficult to translate into Pathfinder, but I think I figured out a way to make it all work. With a single concession. To bring this all together, Aurora is going to have to take the Magus class and use the Laughing Shadow hybrid study. The unfortunate aspect of all of this is it forces Aurora into being a melee fighter, likely favoring a rapier to represent her wand, or a rapier pistol if you want to be able to inject some range into the build. However, right off the bat, Arcane Cascade is a great fit for her passive, especially when you add in the features provided by her Laughing Shadow. Arcane Cascade adds damage to her strikes, like the third hit of her passive, while also increasing her speed, just like her spirit mode. This lacks the healing aspect of it, but I do actually have an idea for that as well as we get deeper into this build. There is an argument, I believe, to stick with Magus and possibly use the Starlit Span hybrid study, since it can fight with ranged, but in addition to what I've already mentioned, the Laughing Shadow study has some other features that sold me on its usage in this build. Moving on from there, typically the Magus does not get a class feat at first level, but since we took Natural Ambition, Aurora can take Magus's Analysis. Aurora seems to be the studious sort, and this ability allows her to recall knowledge while possibly recharging her spell strike while she's at it. It might also be fun to treat the knowledge that she gets from this as her conversing with the spirits and seeing what they know. On the topic of spell strikes, and spells in general, I like Ray of Frost as a solid cantrip attack spell that she can use for her spell strike, while also calling to mind her home region. From her first rank spells, Hydraulic Push could probably be used to represent a little bit of the weirding. This pushes back the target rather than the recoil knocking Aurora back, but that's a minor thing, and I do kinda like it in this regard. As a Magus, Aurora is automatically trained in Arcana, and will also become trained in Acrobatics, Athletics, Occultism, and Survival. Rounding out first level are Aurora's ability scores, of which Dexterity is going to be the most prominent. However, Intelligence is going to be highly important to this build as well, and while I suggest it cautiously, it might even be worth taking a boost to Int with the free boost from her background, since it can facilitate both Intelligence and Dexterity. Having a high intelligence may allow Aurora to use spells as they are intended to be used, instead of always feeling the need to spell strike with them, and perhaps fit a bit better into her ranged nature in League. Beyond that though, at second level, Aurora takes up Force Fang, a feat and focus spell that I've talked with a buddy about before, and have developed differing opinions. He's of the mind that this is something of a trap option, but I have to think that in the context of the Magus, this is a fantastic choice. It is a damage-dealing conflux spell that is a single action, which means that it recharges Aurora's spell strike while also allowing her to slip some damage in. Now, Dimensional Assault does something similar and even includes a move, but it requires an attack roll, which discourages the following it up with a spell strike. I think Force Fang is nice because it's guaranteed damage without increasing your map and still while recharging your spell strike, so you could potentially follow it up with one of those. Her skill feat is a bit less controversial, and is a good bit simpler. Quick Jump lets her spring about the battlefield as a single action. The main reason that I'm taking this is because, well, Aurora's a bunny girl. Racist it may be, but bunnies jump. Into the jaws of dogs based off of the last bunnies I had, but I digress. She does get to pick up a second first rank spell slot, which, aside from Hydraulic Push, can be filled with Fleet Step to add to the speed representing your spirit mode. I think a solid way to represent the weirding, at least within Pathfinder's 3-action economy, is a big blast followed by her stepping back. Feather Step as her general feat at 3rd level helps her do just that when she finds herself trapped in difficult terrain. With her first skill increase, she'll boost Occultism and become an expert in it, making her better versed in the knowledge of spirits and similar creatures. Aurora also unlocks second rank spells, and there's actually an important pick here, Floating Flame. While a bit unconventional, we are going to use this to recreate her twofold Hex, though I'll probably need to explain how just a bit. This ability unleashes a damaging effect, just like the initial casting of Floating Flame. Then, it can be recast, or sustained, to bring it rolling back and damage everybody it passes through. It's a pretty simple concept, but one that I think ends up working out, and I wouldn't have figured out without a buddy's help. By 4th level, we're going to take a brief detour from the Magus into the Exorcist dedication, based largely on Aurora's interaction with the spiritual world and ability to call to them to aid her. This starts her off with a reaction that allows her to lessen the damage of other spiritual creatures, but as we delve deeper into this dedication, more options will present themselves. In regards to her skill feat, this spiritualist sweetheart selects Root Magic, letting her use her spiritual know-how to assemble protections against spells or haunts, the latter of which she would be particularly well versed in. Then, as per her title as the Witch Between Worlds, Aurora takes Witch Warden as her 5th level ancestry feat, as she knows how to fend off such forces, having worked with them herself. To help her hops, she then becomes an expert in athletics, and can also become trained in crafting from a boost to intelligence, a proficiency inspired by her connection to Orn, the Lord of the Forge. This level also comes with 3rd rank spells, the most notable of which will be Haste. This is different than an increase in speed, but it's another way to get Aurora moving quicker while expanding on her action options. The use of the arcane list means that we're a little lacking in healing, but this foray into the Exorcist dedication means that this build can take Spirit's Absolution, which lets Aurora use a spirit in her dwelling to restore her health. Now, unfortunately, this isn't an exact copy of her spirit mode healing. It's a burst of healing rather than a over time effect. But as something that would have been tough to fit in at all, this is a pretty nice get. Her skill feat will then be Powerful Leap, focusing on her natural abilities as a rabbit folk to jump farther and faster while making use of her expertise in athletics. For 7th level, this build will stick with skill feats and take Consult the Spirits as her general feat, thanks to her increasing her occultism to master proficiency with this level up. This is a perfect fit for this type of character, and I'm glad to be able to explore it through her skill feats as well as her class feats. On top of this flavorful aspect, there's 2 4th rank spells of import to this build, especially when it comes to representing her Between Worlds ultimate. Firstly, there is Wall of Fire, which she can cast in a circle to close enemies within, and damage those that try to pass through it. Once she has the wall in place, she can bring Flicker to bear, a teleportation spell with a decent duration that lets her easily dart about, bouncing from one side to the other without even having to spend an action, while also making her more resilient to damage. I will acknowledge that these are both a bit of a stretch, but it's going to be to try to capture the feeling of her ultimate, because that is a tough nut to crack. While at 6th level, we could get a feat that allowed Aurora to use these spirits to heal her, Spirit's Anguish at 8th level lets her use these spirits to harm her enemies instead. This unleashes a blast in an area akin to the Weirding that she can follow up with a step to more fully recreate its effects. I like this one specifically for the fact that even the description of this ability is an Unleashed Spirit, matching the flavor of this effect in League. However, I will admit that a line would have been a better fit, and we'll find other options for that as we delve deeper. Before we get to any of that though, we have Break Curse as our skill feat for this level. Aurora has some familiarity with curses and the like as exhibited by her 2-fold hex, and I think knowing how to break them is an important piece of knowledge for her. One of the reasons behind taking the human ancestry is that it allows us to grab multi-talented at 9th level, which lets Aurora take a witch dedication. She'll want a patron with the occult spell list, though it isn't super important which one she grabs, since she won't be able to use any of its other features. She will become trained in diplomacy, unlocks a single occult cantrip that she can prepare, and finally gets a familiar, which I would use to reference the spiritual friend that she made in her background, Haystreer. Through her actual skill increase, she becomes a master in athletics. Then, when it comes to spells for this level, she can use Wall of Ice as a slightly less permeable wall compared to her Wall of Fire, and maybe pick up Blink Charge to launch herself into the fray, though while similar to some of her other aspects, it doesn't exactly fit any of her abilities. With Aurora's 10th level, we find another reason as to why I took the Laughing Shadow study, as she picks up Dimensional Disappearance. This will let her use Dimensional Assault, but instead of attacking, she can simply turn invisible, just like her Across the Veil. This has some fun use as she can make this hop to recharge her Spell Strike, but hold off on making the attack, and then Spell Strike an enemy unaware of her positioning. For her skill feats, she can also take Wall Jump, mostly because she has the investment in athletics and all those other jumping feats. This does lend to some fun tactics, and with Quick Jump, maybe even some verticality in her movement, and then another boost to intelligence will also let her become trained in nature, which feels right given the wilderness of her home. Fleet, as Aurora's 11th level general feat, enhances her speed, which has the added benefit of letting this leggy lagomorph leap longer and higher than ever before. She starts to increase spirit lore given her association with the creatures, and I think this is one of the few builds where I'm actually applying increases to a lore skill. For Aurora's 12th level class feat, she takes basic witch spellcasting, netting her a scattering of occult spells. I like Force Barrage since it isn't reliant upon her intelligence bonus or rolls at all, but second rank is a bit more important as it lets her take Inner Radiance Torrent, which might be the best way to resemble the Weirding, being a powerful line of energy that she can blast out. As for her skill feat, I'd take up Aura Sight inspired by her ability to see spirits. I'd flavor this as seeing the spirit of a subject even while they're in a solid state. We're still using human ancestry feats at 13th level, taking Hardy Traveler to make this ravishing rabbit faster for overland travel, as well as letting her carry just a bit more. I'm not sure how resilient the Brynny naturally are to the cold, but this will help her lug around whatever gear she needs for her harsh home. Another skill increase makes her a master in spirit lore. The only spell of note this time around is Force Cage as just another way to entrap people per her Between Worlds. This build looks for another conflict spell at 14th level, mainly just to get some more focus points, but I do think Hasted Assault is one of the better options. The ability to become quickened with a focus spell is huge, and it also means that she can use her Dimensional Assault and Disappearance more frequently. Her skill feat, Common Centered, is from a newer book, and I kind of just wanted to show it off because I think it's neat, letting her reduce her frightened or stupefied values with greater effectiveness. At 15th level, while it's not nearly fast enough to represent the enhanced healing of her spirit mode, Aurora can use fast recovery as her general feat, to more swiftly recover from various afflictions, and also heal more while she's resting. She can become a legend in occultism with her 15th level skill increase, and then, while it may not be super pertinent, there are some fun spells here at 8th rank. Polar Ray is another spell strike option, and Arctic Rift is a line of cold that she can step after casting, which is honestly another great point for the weirding. The fact that this can also make a creature slowed fits in fantastically with the slowing effect of this ability in League as well, and both of them match the theming of her Arctic abode. We're back to being a wild witchy woman with expert witch spellcasting as the 16th level class feat. This mainly adds more occult spells to her arsenal, but there isn't anything super standout among these options. I think it might be worth taking up some curses given her association with them. For example, Twofold Hex is described as curse energy. That might seem a little odd as Aurora does kinda seem to be the gentle sort, which also makes Disturbing Knowledge a weird choice as her skill feat. And that is why I waited so long to take it. However, I think you could flavor this to have her sort of do it incidentally while interacting with the spirits that others can't see, as she seemed to do back when her tribe began to ostracize her. Managing more mobility into this mage's makeup, Aurora can take Animal Swiftness as her 17th level Ancestry feat. With her kindred animal lacking any forms of special movement, this adds 10 feet to her movement speed, which gets her up to 40 feet of movement speed before she even enters Arcane Cascade. This means that once she does, she will be able to Dimensional Assault up to 25 feet away. She'll take her skill increase in Athletics then, so that she can finally become a Lagomorphic Legend of Leaps. Level 18 is a little boring. Master Witch spellcasting just gives her more options to throw out there, while Cloud Jump is simply the natural progression of all the jumping and leaping feats that she has been taking since 2nd level. For 19th level, given her association with Ornn, a creator of a vast number of magical artifacts, Aurora uses Incredible Investiture as her general feat. This will help her carry around more magical items, and she can also become a legend in Spirit Lore with the final skill increase provided by her class. There aren't exactly a lot of options when it comes to capstone class feats for the Magus, but I think Supreme Spell Strike is the way to go here. This makes her permanently quickened, which is another way to represent the speed of her spirit mode, and I think it's easily the better option between the two 20th level feats. As for her skill feat, following up Common Centered, she takes Comforting Presence, another new one. This can remove Frightened or Stupefied from an ally, but she can reduce herself more effectively thanks to that previous skill feat. On the topic of skills, a final boost to intelligence can make her trained in medicine to round out this build. This all makes for a surprisingly nimble Magus that dances in and out of combat, but in a free archetype game, she can more fully explore the flavor and themes of her character. From the Exorcist dedication, she could snag Spiritual Sense and Enticing Dwelling, respectively matching her backstory and just being more mechanically effective. She could also use basic witchcraft, mainly to make her familiar more effective, and add Patron's Breath for some extra spells. With her freed up feats, she'll want picks like Striker's Scrolls, Attack of Opportunity, and likely Conflux Focus. This makes for a seemingly solid build, but let's go ahead and review what we've done, because there are a few marks that I might have missed. Aurora, the Witch Between Worlds, is a rabbitkin human magus of the Laughing Shadow hybrid study and the Willing Host background. Her heritage directly references her Vistaean ancestry, that is also touched on with a number of jumping feats and animal swiftness. The Willing Host background is based on her ability to see spirits, which is further explored through her Exorcist dedication. Aurora can of course use a wand, and I included some in my gear for this build, but we are unfortunately making her a melee combatant, meaning her gift from Ornn may be better represented as a rapier or similar finesse weapon. The extra damage of Aurora's Spirit Abjuration can come from her Arcane Cascade, while the speed aspect of her Spirit mode comes not only from the Laughing Shadow specific cascade, but also from spells like Warp Step, Fleet Step, and her Animal Swiftness feat. The healing from it will have to come from her Spirit's Absolution, which comes in as a burst rather than the overtime effect it actually is. Twofold Hex is another difficult effect, mainly due to the recast effect, but Floating Flame and Sustain end up covering that rather nicely, even if it does eat into her action economy a little bit. The Laughing Shadow Magus grants Aurora the Dimensional Disappearance option to recreate her across a veil, allowing her to make a leap and disappear while she collects conflux spells to have the focus points to pull it off a couple of times. She hunts for area blasts to recreate the weirding, looking at choices such as Spirit's Anguish or Inner Radiance Torrent for the most flavorful fits, whereas Arctic Rift can inflict the slowed condition per the reduced speed of this effect. Once more, Between Worlds is a rough one, and ultimately takes some setup on her part. She has to create a ring with spells such as Wall of Fire, Wall of Ice, or Force Cage, and can then use Dimensional Assault or Flicker to teleport about the entrapped area. She stays mobile with speed enhancing feats and spells as well as Dimensional Assault, which can also turn her invisible thanks to Dimensional Disappearance. Her rabbit-like hops come from her skill feats and might go beyond what you'd call rabbit-like. Spirit's Anguish, Inner Radiance Torrent, and Arctic Rift give her some solid area options, while reaching into wall spells help her entrap foes to punish them properly. A Herald of Haunts, this hardy hare has a home in a hoarfrost habitat where she helps at the hearth home, but has heaps of horror to harass and hound hoodlums. I definitely had to do some thinking to figure out this build, and while I'm happy with it, there's a part of me still disgruntled by the bits and bobs that I missed. With that being the case, let me know what you think of this build, how I did with it, and what other builds you'd like to see in a comment. You can check out other builds I've already done, or monsters I made in the description below, where you can find item suggestions for each level. Thanks for watching, and have a fantastic Friday.